Have you ever found yourself thinking about doing good and immediately picturing a massive company making a really generous charitable donation?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or maybe a wealthy individual, publicly writing a huge check.
Exactly. It's a pretty common image, right? We see those headlines all the time, the grand announcements, maybe those glossy annual reports,
Mm-hmm.
and we instinctively think, okay, that's it. That's the pinnacle of corporate social responsibility.
Right. That's what good corporate citizenship looks like.
But what if I told you that focusing solely on those, well, visible acts of benevolence might actually be missing the entire, much more profound picture?
Okay, go on.
What if the true measure of doing good isn't just about how much money a company gives away? What if something far more fundamental, like how it makes that money in the first place?
Okay. That's precisely the powerful distinction we're going to dissect today. We're embarking on a deep dive into a concept far more expansive and I think impactful than just superficial acts of charity.
And that concept is
The idea of stewardship.
stewardship. Okay.
Yeah. And this isn't merely about generosity or, sporadic good deeds. It's really about the careful, responsible management and genuine care for everything that's been entrusted to you.
Interested.
Whether you're talking about the world's largest, most complex corporations and their vast resources, or on the other end of the scale, the smallest, most vital local communities and their, say, delicate ecosystems, it applies across the board.
So our mission today is to truly understand the critical, and I think you're right, often overlooked, difference between mere financial contributions and a deep ethical responsibility that kind of permeates every single action.
Exactly. We're going to try and demonstrate how authentic stewardship, when it's genuinely practiced, can lead to sustainable long-term benefits for absolutely everyone involved.
Not one. So from
From the intricate dynamics of global markets and supply chains all the way down to the health of the most delicate ecosystems and, crucially, the well-being of the human beings who live within them.
Okay. And to do this, we'll be examining some truly compelling real-world examples that illustrate this vital distinction, right? Kind of pulling back the curtain on how companies and communities really operate beyond the PR.
That's the plan. We'll challenge that conventional wisdom that often just equates good deeds with donations, a perception that, let's be honest, can sometimes be intentionally cultivated to distract from less ethical core practices.
Right, the sort of look over here effect.
Precisely. And you'll discover why how you make money, or perhaps more broadly, how you manage resources, holds immense foundational significance. In many ways, it often outweighs or even completely negates how you spend it after the fact.
Okay, that's a bold claim.
It is, but we'll look at the evidence. We'll highlight surprising case studies, companies and communities that truly seem to embody this principle, showing how integrated ethics lead to tangible, positive outcomes.
And I assume the flip side, too. Those that don't quite measure up.
And equally importantly, yes, we'll look at those that unfortunately fall critically short. Crucially, as we move through our deep dive, we'll try to uncover the invisible social connections, the community structures, that act as the very foundation for genuine stewardship to actually flourish. It's not just about individual actors.
Got it. So it's about the how, not just the what, and the underlying social fabric that supports it. Let's dive in.
Unpacking stewardship beyond the donation box.
Okay, let's unpack this core idea then, the one that sets true stewardship apart from, well, just simple charity. When the term corporate social responsibility, or CSR, comes up in conversation, our minds do often jump straight to those grand charitable gestures, right?
The big donations from large companies.
Yeah, it's certainly the most visible form of doing good, the one that consistently gets the most media attention, the public accolades.
It's easy to report on, I suppose.
Right. But our first source, an excerpt from Business and the Society, Stewardship Principle of CSR. It really challenges this conventional and, quite frankly, maybe limited understanding. It pushes us, and by extension you listening, to look much deeper into the true heart of corporate responsibility.
And what's fascinating here, right off the bat, is that the research identifies two distinct principles within CSR. They're often conflated, but they're different. The charity principle and the stewardship principle.
Okay, charity versus stewardship.
Exactly. So the charity principle focuses squarely on how companies spend their money. Think about donations to nonprofits, funding community projects like, I don't know, a new park, or providing disaster relief efforts. That's the charity side.
That's the visible stuff we talked about.
Right. But the stewardship principle is about something much more fundamental, much more pervasive. It's about how they make their money.
Ah, okay. The how.
Yes. This means operating with unwavering ethical and responsible practices in their core business functions. Everything from the way they source raw materials to their production methods, the treatment and fair compensation of their employees, and even the responsible disposal of their waste. It's the whole life cycle.
And this stewardship principle, you're saying, despite its profound importance.
Yeah, despite its foundational importance to true sustainable responsibility, it's historically received far less attention in academic research and, frankly, in public discourse.
Which seems like a significant oversight, given what you're saying.
It really is, especially considering its potential to shape genuine, lasting impact.
So if you're listening, what's the real crux of this difference for you and I guess for all of us as consumers, as citizens?
Yeah.
The source puts it very plainly, and it's a quote that I think really serves as a guiding star for our entire deep dive today.
Okay, what is it?
It says, "It's immaterial how much worth the charity you make, but it matters how you make that money."
Wow. Okay, that's blunt.
It is blunt, but it highlights the very essence of stewardship, doesn't it? It implies that genuine responsibility isn't just an optional add-on, an act of giving you due after you've already accumulated your profits however you did it.
Right. It's not just writing a check at the end of the year.
No. Instead, it's an inherent foundational commitment to ethical business operations that should permeate every single decision and action a company takes, right from its inception, woven into its very DNA.
You've absolutely hit on the key point there, and it immediately forces us to confront a really difficult question, doesn't it?
Which is?
Can a company truly call itself socially responsible if it generates profits at the expense of human life, or human dignity, or environmental integrity?
That's a tough one.
The paper emphatically argues no. There's absolutely no point in such a scenario. It's a powerful statement because it just cuts through all the potential public relations rhetoric and gets straight to the heart of the matter.
So stewardship inherently implies?
Oh, what?
Considering consequences.
Yeah. A deep consideration for the full consequences of a company's operations, and fulfilling comprehensive obligations to society, not just those that are legally mandated or, financially convenient at the time.
Okay.
It posits that, and I quote again, "The business of any business is to do an ethical business."
The business of business is ethical business.
In this view, yes. It means that ethical conduct isn't merely a nice-to-have or a box to tick on a report. It is, according to this principle, the very core purpose that justifies a business's existence and its right to operate within a society.
And without that?
Without it, the entire edifice of social responsibility just crumbles. It's built on sand.
Okay. To give us an even clearer framework for understanding this, multi-layered responsibility, you mentioned Carroll, way back in 1991, introduced something called the Pyramid of Social Responsibility.
That's right. It's a hierarchical model, and it's quite useful for visualizing the different levels of obligation a company has, kind of building from the ground up.
Like building block.
Exactly. Foundational and interdependent, much like building a sturdy house. At the very base of the pyramid, the foundation, you have the economic responsibility.
Makes sense. Got to stay in business.
Precisely. It's about being profitable and sustainable, because without economic viability, a business literally cannot exist to fulfill any other responsibilities. It's the engine.
Okay, base layer.
Right.
Economic. What's next?
Next up is the legal stage. This simply means obeying all applicable laws and regulations, operating within the established rules of society. It's the bare minimum expectation.
Right. Don't break the law.
Pretty much. Above that, we find the ethical stage. Now, this involves adhering to moral principles and fairness, even when you're not legally required to do so.
Ah, okay. Going beyond the letter of the law.
Yes. This is where a company acts justly, honorably, does what is right, even if it might cost them a little more in the short term, perhaps.
Okay, economic, legal, ethical, and the top.
Finally, at the very top, the pinnacle, there's the philanthropic stage. This is where a company is expected to be a good corporate citizen, often through those charitable acts and giving back to the community that we initially talked about.
Right. The donations and stuff.
Yes. Now, the key challenge, as our source implies, arises precisely when companies prioritize the top of the pyramid philanthropy, which is, let's face it, the most visible and often celebrated aspect, while neglecting the fundamental economic, legal, and especially the ethical responsibilities embedded in their core operations.
So it's like trying to put a fancy roof on a house with crumbling foundations.
That's a perfect analogy. It's like trying to adorn a magnificent chandelier on a house that has no stable foundation, crumbling walls, or a leaky roof. The charitable giving might look good, get good press, but the core structure is fundamentally unsound.
Okay, that makes sense. So given these layers, why do companies engage in CSR at all? I mean, if the ethical base is shaky, why bother with the philanthropy?
Well, our source suggests it's widely perceived as a win-win situation for both business and society. And the benefits for companies can be quite tangible and compelling, which often drives the initial motivation, even if it's sometimes superficial.
Like what kind of benefits?
Things like an improved brand image, obviously, that can attract more customers, build deeper loyalty, foster a stronger sense of trust.
Okay, image is big.
Huge. Then there's the potential for reduced operating costs. If you think about the efficiencies gained from truly sustainable practices, comprehensive recycling, optimized energy conservation, responsible water usage that minimizes waste, those can save money.
Right. Being green can actually save green.
Sometimes, yes. Furthermore, strong, authentic CSR can lead to increased stakeholder loyalty, and that's not just customers. It includes dedicated employees, supportive suppliers, even discerning investors.
And easier access to capital, you mentioned.
Yes, for those seeking growth, ethical practices can paradoxically make it easier to access capital, as a growing number of investors increasingly favor socially responsible businesses that demonstrate long-term vision and lower risk.
But this raises an important question, doesn't it? Does ethical CSR truly lead to profitability in all cases? Is it always a direct line?
That's where the research presents a more nuanced view. It's not always a straightforward yes, especially not in the immediate term. Some studies, particularly in sectors like banking and insurance, actually indicate that customers aren't always fully aware of or don't necessarily prioritize CSR initiatives when making their purchasing decisions.
So the direct link to immediate sales isn't always guaranteed.
Not always obvious, no. However, there's a significant and compelling argument that posits doing what is right is always beneficial in the long run.
Long game.
Absolutely. This long-term perspective is crucial. It's about building a sustainable reputation, fostering genuine trust, cultivating resilient operations that can maybe weather economic downturns or reputational challenges better.
And how it's communicated matters too, you said.
Critically important. How CSR initiatives are publicized can either destroy or build a company's image. It depends entirely on the transparency and authenticity of the communication.
So misleading or exaggerated claims.
They can dramatically backfire, erode trust rather than build it. That whole phenomenon we often call greenwashing.
Right. You know, one of the most intriguing points this source brings up is quite unexpected, actually. It suggests companies can sometimes be more responsible when they're not legally required to be.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's this fascinating paradox. When it's voluntary, companies often believe that genuine CSR naturally fosters good business and better long-term outcomes, rather than just seeing it as a regulatory burden to be minimally complied with.
So the motivation changes, intrinsic versus extrinsic.
Exactly. Why do you think that happens? Is it pure ethics, or is there a shrewd business reason lurking beneath?
It's likely a mix. There's probably a genuine belief in the value for some, maybe a strategic understanding of long-term reputation for others. But the source also notes that consistent ethical involvement in CSR can actually help companies counter its negatives in times of crises.
Like a reputational buffer.
Precisely. It acts like a reputational shield, built up over years of good practice, which allows them to weather storms more effectively because they have a reservoir of public trust, hopefully, to draw upon.
And it's not just external benefits, right? The source mentioned employees, too.
Yes, a really important point. It's found that employees are more comfortable and very proud to work for those companies which are involving in CSR activities ethically.
Which translates to
higher morale, better retention, potentially a more engaged and productive workforce. That's a powerful internal dividend that often gets underestimated.
So this highlights a critical insight then. For society to derive the utmost benefit from CSR, companies need to engage voluntarily, right, out of an intrinsic motivation, not just to comply with laws.
That seems to be the argument. If it's just about ticking boxes, the impact is diminished, both for the company and certainly for society. It lacks that genuine commitment.
Now, it's worth noting you mentioned there's a counter-argument, too.
Yes, it's important to acknowledge the complexity. There is a school of thought, outlined in our source, where some researchers argue against the very existence of CSR.
Really, why?
They claim it's solely the government's role, since corporations already pay taxes. This perspective views CSR as an unnecessary burden on businesses, a distraction from their primary economic function, which they argue is simply to maximize shareholder wealth within the bounds of the law.
So it's a complex and ongoing debate.
Absolutely. Proponents on both sides argue about the proper boundaries of corporate responsibility versus state responsibility in addressing societal needs, particularly when it comes to social welfare and environmental protection. There's no single, easy answer.
And in our increasingly interconnected world, this global village,
Driven by technology and globalization.
ethical expectations have evolved significantly, haven't they? What might have been acceptable, or at least ignored, in one country yesterday is now scrutinized globally, often in real time.
That's a crucial observation. That interconnectedness means corporate actions in one part of the world can have immediate and far-reaching reputational and even financial consequences everywhere else.
So what does that mean for ethical standards?
It means that what's considered ethically responsible can no longer vary significantly between countries without immediate and often severe blowback. Businesses are now fundamentally expected to maintain consistent and high standards across all their global operations.
No more hiding behind weaker local regulations.
Increasingly, no. It reflects an expectation of a positive, coherent, and transparent relationship between the business and the diverse communities they operate in, achieved through robust and transparent CSR practices built on stewardship.
So it challenges companies to apply their best ethical practices everywhere.
Exactly. Not just in their home markets or where regulations are strictest. For example, a garment manufacturer can't really justify poor labor conditions or environmental pollution in a developing country simply because local laws are lax. Global consumers, activists, investors, they'll hold them to a higher universal standard of stewardship.
Corporate stewardship in practice. A tale of 4 companies.
Okay, our first source really brings this whole concept of stewardship to life by examining 4 specific companies, all operating within the, very visible food industry.
Right, tangible products we all interact with.
Exactly. These include 2 prominent Indian domestic companies, Patanjali and ITC, and 2 widely recognized multinational corporations, Coca-Cola and Kellogg's.
A good mix.
Yeah, and the study's core purpose was pretty clear: to differentiate between those that genuinely seem to follow the stewardship principle, truly embedding ethical practices into their core operations, and those that primarily rely on the charity principle, often despite making grand claims of comprehensive responsibility.
And the findings, you said they were stark.
Yeah, the findings are quite stark, offering a powerful, real-world mirror to the theoretical discussions we've just had.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, the study's conclusion is rather sobering, actually. It asserts that most popular and large companies who claim to be a good corporate citizens tend not to follow the stewardship principle.
Wow. Most. That's a strong statement.
It is, and it goes on to issue a very pointed warning, stating that this failure to adopt true stewardship can prove very costly for them in the future.
Suggesting that the charity veneer, it doesn't hold up long term.
Exactly. It suggests that a mere veneer of charity, while perhaps creating short-term goodwill or positive PR, simply cannot sustain a company that fundamentally operates without ethical integrity at its core. It's a powerful testament to the idea that true responsibility is a long game, and shortcuts eventually catch up.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. Where do we start?
Let's begin with a deep dive into Coca-Cola. I mean, a brand instantly recognizable across the globe.
Absolutely. Ubiquitous.
The company publicly claims to be a good corporate citizen, vocally asserts it follows the stewardship principle. They've even received the prestigious Golden Peacock Award for their CSR activities. That's a significant accolade in the corporate world.
So they've got the awards, the image.
They meticulously cultivate an image of global responsibility, deep community engagement, unwavering environmental care. But our source prompts us, and you listening, to ask that crucial question. Do their actual practices, the day-to-day operations, genuinely align with these impressive public claims?
Or is this, as the study implies, maybe an example of the charity principle masking a fundamental deficit in true stewardship?
That's the question.
And this is incredibly important because the report details significant negative impacts that seem to sharply contradict their public image and those claims of stewardship.
Such as?
Consider, for example, the situation in Kalladera, a village in Rajasthan, India. Coca-Cola's bottling plant, established there in 2000, was found to be rapidly and, according to the source, irresponsibly depleting local groundwater levels.
Depleting groundwater. That's huge for local communities.
Massive. Imagine being a farmer in that village, depending on those ancient water tables for your crops, your family's livelihood, only to see them just vanish because a large corporation is extracting millions of liters daily.
Devastating.
It critically affected local farmers, dependent on agriculture, and led to a severe shortage of clean drinking water in the community.
Yeah.
And despite being repeatedly warned about these impacts,
They continued.
Coca-Cola reportedly continued operations, demonstrating, in the words of the source, a profound lack of accountability and corporate citizenship.
Until...
Ultimately, due to mounting pressure and pretty undeniable evidence of environmental harm, they were forced to shut down in Kalladera.
Was this an isolated incident?
Apparently not. The report details similar situations where local water resources were over-extracted and polluted, occurring in Flashamada, Kerala, where the plant has been shut down since 2004, and in Mediganj, Uttar Pradesh, where their license was canceled due to water and land pollution caused by their operations.
So multiple instances. It suggests a pattern.
It paints a concerning picture of a recurring pattern of behavior that directly impacts human communities and the environment. Yeah.
And it gets even more concerning when you look at their approach to transparency, right? Which you'd think is a cornerstone of true stewardship.
You would think. But Coca-Cola reportedly refused to disclose environmental impact reports related to these incidents, citing legal confidentiality.
Which immediately raises red flags.
Huge red flags. It fuels public suspicion. They were explicitly accused of irresponsibly extracting millions of liters of water in these Indian villages, profoundly impacting communities that rely on these precious, finite resources for their very survival.
And the water they released back, the effluent.
Furthermore, their treated effluent discharge, the water they released back into the environment, was found to be not in compliance with stringent government regulations, meaning it led to indiscriminate pollution of both land and water, making it unfit for further use by local populations. This isn't just a minor oversight. The source frames it as a direct and significant violation of environmental responsibility and public trust.
And what about their claims of water restoration, rainwater harvesting?
Ah, yes. What's truly fascinating and troubling, here is the claim Coca-Cola made, that they had restored the amount of water it used through rainwater harvesting initiatives in India.
Sounds good on paper.
It does. However, the source found this claim to be unsubstantiated and ultimately untrue due to a critical lack of verifiable data or proper verification devices. It suggests it was perhaps more of a public relations strategy than a genuine measurable commitment.
And historically, any other issues?
Well, looking back historically, the company has faced scrutiny over its ingredients too.
Right.
For example, it initially used cocaine in its recipe, which was later banned,
Right, that's well known.
and substituted with caffeine, another addictive ingredient. While maybe not directly related to stewardship today, it raises historical questions about product design and consumer well-being. More recently, and quite unsettlingly, they distributed waste materials from their plants as fertilizers to nearby farmers.
As fertilizer, really?
Yeah, ostensibly to improve their brand image and contribute to local agriculture. However, these materials were found by regulators to be extremely dangerous, posing a serious health risk,
Oh my goodness.
which led to an immediate and presumably embarrassed withdrawal of the practice. Again, it showcases a potential pattern of prioritizing image over genuine safety and responsibility. The source also notes findings that Coca-Cola's bottled water and soft drinks in India contained harmful pesticides.
Pesticides in the drinks.
That was the finding reported, prompting widespread public concern about product safety.
This also reminds me of that classic issue of dual standards, something multinational corporations sometimes face accusations of.
How so?
Well, the company was found, according to the source, to be selling substandard products in India with certain samples containing insecticides that actually exceeded limits set by European standards.
Ah, so different standards for different markets.
Essentially, yeah. What was deemed unsafe for European consumers was apparently acceptable for Indian ones, highlighting a significant ethical inconsistency. They were also sued back in 2006 for a false claim and labeling process, adding to a list of transparency issues.
So this whole list, environmental degradation, resource depletion, product safety concerns, misleading claims.
It casts a very long, dark shadow on their claims of being a true corporate citizen and steward, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And if we connect this back to the main point, the study concludes, quite unequivocally, that despite Coca-Cola's significant contributions to the world economy and its widespread public claims of being a good corporate citizen, it is, in reality, not following the principle of stewardship.
Because of these documented practices.
Because of these documented, pervasive, and unethical practices in how it makes money and conducts its core operations. Their charitable donations, however substantial they might be in dollar amounts, simply cannot offset or mask that fundamental lack of responsibility and integrity in their basic business practices.
A powerful lesson. You can't buy your way out of unethical conduct.
Seems to be the conclusion here, yes.
Okay, next, let's shift our focus and examine Patanjali. This is another prominent Indian domestic company.
Right, known for Ayurvedic products, among other things.
Exactly. And at first glance, Patanjali presents itself as, well, a paragon of philanthropy, especially within India. It proudly claims to donate 100% of their profits to charity.
100%. That's a huge claim.
It is, focusing on laudable areas like education, medical research, health initiatives, disaster relief. Official data from the financial year 2015-2016 even shows they spent about 575 lakhs, which is roughly 57.5 million Indian rupees, or maybe around 6.9 million US dollars on these initiatives.
Okay, that sounds incredibly generous.
Yeah.
Truly benevolent on the surface.
It does. However, and there's always a however in these cases, it seems.
The source reiterates that core principle again, doesn't it?
It does. Quote, CSR is not about the way a company spends its money, but it is about how it makes money.
And this is where Patanjali's image starts to unravel under scrutiny.
Precisely. Despite their significant charitable claims, Patanjali has been widely accused of false and misleading claims in its advertisements.
Like what kind of claims?
They've made bold, unsubstantiated proclamations that competitors use cancer-causing elements or mix cheap palm oil in their products, things like mineral oil, mustard oil, fruit juice, even cattle feed.
Wow, aggressive marketing.
Very. While simultaneously asserting that Patanjali's own products are pure, natural, and superior, claims that were not proven and were in fact challenged and found to be deceptive.
And the study's take on that.
It explicitly states that companies genuinely following the stewardship principle would not be involved in such unethical marketing tactics. Why? Because they fundamentally erode trust with consumers and mislead the public, which is completely antithetical to responsible operation.
Makes sense. Trust is paramount.
And it gets even more concerning. Patanjali was actually fined a significant R11 lakhs, that's about 1.3 million US dollars for misbranding and misleading advertisements.
Fined? For what exactly?
Specifically for selling products with its labels that were actually manufactured by other firms.
Oh, so passing off other companies' products as their own.
Exactly. A clear, deliberate attempt to mislead buyers about the origin and quality of the products they were purchasing.
That's serious. What about product quality itself?
Well, moreover, several Patanjali products failed critical quality tests conducted by the District Food Safety Department. For instance, their annada, that's flour noodles, were found to contain 3 times more than the acceptable limit of ash, making them substandard, potentially harmful.
Not good.
Their amla juice and shivlingi beej also failed crucial quality tests, having less than the prescribed pH value. This led to their rejection by the Armed Forces Canteen Stores Department, indicating a serious lack of quality control.
Rejected by the military canteen. That's telling.
And it didn't stop there. Nepal's Drug Administration even asked Patanjali Ayurveda Ltd. to recall 6 of its medicines after they failed lab tests, found to be substandard. Some even contained pathogenic bacteria.
Bacteria.
In medicines.
That was the finding. These are not minor issues. They strike at the very heart of product integrity and consumer safety, directly impacting health.
Okay, so serious issues with marketing and product quality. What about those charitable acts? The 100% donation claim.
Well, this raises a critical question regarding those charitable acts. Were they always truly altruistic, or did they sometimes serve another purpose?
Meaning?
In September 2017, Patanjali allegedly distributed expired milk powder and juice worth Rs 12 lakhs, about 1.4 million US dollars for Assam's flood relief. A devastating natural disaster.
Expired goods. For flood relief. That's the allegation. And shockingly, this reportedly led to several people falling sick after consuming these expired products.
Oh, it's terrible.
The source explicitly states that, in the name of donations, some companies use this opportunity to promote their names by donating substandard and expired products
So it transforms a supposed act of kindness.
into a deeply unethical and potentially harmful marketing ploy, exploiting a vulnerable population for brand promotion.
That's just cynical.
Beyond product quality and deceptive charity, there are other issues too. Cases were filed against Patanjali for violating fundamental land laws, the Indian Stamps Act and zamindari abolition, and land reforms.
Land laws.
Yes. It was found that the trust held illegal properties in direct contravention of these laws. Villagers in Haridwar directly accused Swami Ramdev, the company's founder, of having grabbed their land and misuse it.
How so?
For example, land initially acquired for manufacturing Ayurvedic medicines was reportedly used later for warehousing and promoting other Patanjali products like flour and oil, deviating significantly from the stated purpose and directly impacting local communities who had given up their land under specific premises.
So bait and switch with land use.
Seems like it. And their advertising ethics came under fire again, too.
What this time? An advertisement for Dant Kanti toothpaste was criticized for highly questionable marketing practices. It misused the names of revered Indian freedom fighters like Bhagat Singh and Mahatma Gandhi, all invoking freedom fighters for toothpaste.
Yes, implying that not using the product questioned one's patriotism and commitment to Swadeshi indigenous products.
That feels wrong.
The source cites it as unethical and immoral, as it exploits deep national sentiment for commercial gain and lacks accountability to the community and the values these figures represent. It's a form of emotional manipulation for profit.
Okay, this is quite a list. Anything else?
Finally, to round out the picture, a case was filed against Swami Ramdev himself for labor law violations in Divya Pharmacy, one of Patanjali's manufacturing units.
Labor violations, too.
Yes, serious allegations including paying low wages to the workers, well below minimum standards, and gravely for not disclosing ingredients in the preparation of Ayurvedic medicines under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940.
Not disclosing ingredients.
Correct. With further allegations of mixing animal bone powder in Ayurvedic medicines.
The animal bone powder. That's incredibly serious, especially for products marketed as natural or Ayurvedic.
Absolutely. These accusations touch upon human rights, transparency in manufacturing, and the purity and safety of their products, deeply undermining any claim of ethical operation.
So the conclusion for Patanjali, despite the 100% charity claim.
The study concludes that despite those claims, Patanjali is definitively not following stewardship principle due to these pervasive, documented, unethical business practices and how it makes money.
Another stark example.
A very stark and powerful example that even significant, highly visible, charitable giving simply cannot compensate for a fundamental and consistent disregard for ethical conduct in core business operations. The how truly outweighs the what in the realm of deep stewardship. Okay, now let's shift our focus. Let's delve into companies that, according to the study, do seem to embody the stewardship principle. It's actually refreshing to see clear examples of what genuine responsibility looks like in action.
Good. We need the positive examples, too.
First up is the Kellogg Company, American multinational food manufacturer widely known globally for its cereals and snacks, founded way back in 1906.
A household name for generations.
Exactly. And what's truly fascinating here, according to the source, is their foundational legacy and how it apparently continues to guide them over a century later.
How so?
The founder, W.K. Kellogg, gave all his wealth to establish the Kellogg Foundation back in 1930, creating a set of enduring values that continues to guide the company to this day.
So philanthropy was baked in early on.
It seems so. And this isn't just a historical footnote. This deep-rooted commitment to philanthropy and community well-being is clearly reflected in their consistent external recognition. Kellogg has been recognized by Forbes as the first world's reputable company and included by Fortune as a world's most admired company for multiple years.
Okay, high praise from reputable sources.
And their vision clearly extends beyond mere profit to, and I quote, create a better life for people through the products. That suggests an inherent long-term sense of responsibility baked into their corporate philosophy from the very beginning.
So how does that translate into practice, beyond the vision statement?
Well, they put that vision into practice in tangible ways. They are dedicated, the source says, to producing simple food made by real people, emphasizing quality, wholesome ingredients, and integrity in their food production.
Okay, focus on the product itself.
But it's not just about their products. They actively collaborate with all their stakeholders, understanding that their impact extends far beyond their factory walls.
Who does that include?
This comprehensive approach includes their employees and their families, ensuring fair labor practices, positive work environment, as well as the local communities where they operate, their network of farmers and suppliers, and even their strategic partners.
A broad view of stakeholders.
Yes, and on the environmental front, they actively work to support farmers with climate-smart agriculture practices, investing in methods that reduce environmental impact and build resilience. They also work to significantly reduce water and energy usage in their manufacturing plants, all while simultaneously reducing waste across their entire operations.
So a holistic approach across the value chain.
It really seems like it, demonstrating a deep commitment from field to consumer.
And are these just goals, or are there concrete achievements?
No, their achievements are concrete and measurable, demonstrating a tangible commitment to their stewardship principles, not just lofty goals. For example, by 2020, 90% of their cereals had less than 10 grams of sugar per serving.
Okay, addressing nutritional concerns.
And 85% had less than 150 milligrams of sodium, showcasing a clear, proactive dedication to healthier products. They also successfully achieved their goal of 75% of their cracker portfolio having 230 milligrams or less of sodium per serving, meeting specific nutritional targets.
So measurable health improvements in their products. What about environmentally?
Environmentally, they aim to reduce water usage by an additional 15% and continue supporting watershed quality through various initiatives, highlighting ongoing efforts in vital resource conservation. They also plan to implement water reuse projects in 25% of their plants.
Water reuse, okay. And sourcing.
They're actively sourcing responsibly, focusing on ingredients and directly supporting smallholder and women farmers to build more sustainable and equitable supply chains.
That direct support for farmers is key.
And in terms of community impact, they plan to contribute an impressive 2.5 billion servings of food to people in need by 2025.
Wow, 2.5 billion.
And expand breakfast programs to reach 2 million children, directly addressing critical issues like food insecurity and childhood nutrition in vulnerable communities.
So tangible social impact goals, too.
Exactly. Kellogg also partners with highly respected and independent organizations like the Indian Dietetic Association, U.S. Smart Label, and the Global Food Safety Initiative.
Why are those partnerships important?
Well, these collaborations are absolutely crucial. They provide external validation, expertise, and oversight, ensuring its products are produced, in the source's words, in an ethical, moral, and health way. It demonstrates a commitment to transparency and adherence to international best practices.
External verification builds credibility.
Definitely. And as a testament to their broader philanthropic commitment, which complements their core stewardship, over 5 years, the company has donated more than US $278.5 million globally.
So the charity is there, but it's part of a bigger picture.
Precisely. It isn't just about charity, it's part of a much larger integrated commitment.
So the overall assessment for Kellogg.
These extensive initiatives clearly demonstrate that Kellogg Company is successfully following its stewardship principle, according to the study.
How so?
They are not merely making donations as an afterthought or as a separate department. Instead, they are deeply embedding social and environmental responsibility into their core business practices and their entire value chain.
From sourcing to manufacturing to product nutrition.
Yes. From how they source ingredients to how they manufacture and what nutritional profile their products offer. This is presented as a clear, compelling example of stewardship in action, where the how of making money is meticulously aligned with ethical, sustainable, and socially beneficial practices, creating value at every step.
A positive model.
Okay, our final example of a company truly practicing stewardship, according to this source, and doing so on a grand scale, is ITC Ltd.
The major Indian firm we mentioned earlier.
Yes, the one with incredibly diverse business segments. FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods information technology, agricultural business. They touch many aspects of daily life in India and beyond.
And that sheer breadth makes their commitment perhaps even more impressive.
Exactly. If they can integrate stewardship across all that, it's significant.
So what are some examples for ITC?
Well, ITC has really distinguished itself in India's green building movement, which is a major national effort to promote sustainable construction. Their Green Center in Gurgaon, for instance, isn't just a modern office, it's recognized as a top green building worldwide.
A leader in green building.
Yes, a testament to cutting-edge sustainable design and operation. Mirroring a strong sense of environmental duty, these structures are a crucial component of their positive environmental action plan, demonstrating commitment not just in their products, but in their very physical infrastructure and operational footprint.
What about social initiatives?
They also actively support differently abled people through their hotel business, not just with token gestures, but by creating valuable employment opportunities and raising awareness among other employers about the importance and benefits of inclusive hiring practices.
That's important work. And environmental initiatives beyond buildings.
The company is consistently broadening its pollution-free environment initiatives, showing a continuous and evolving dedication to minimizing its ecological footprint across all its diverse businesses. As of the time of the report, a significant 48% of their energy consumption was met by renewable sources.
Nearly half from renewables.
Right.
That's substantial.
Yes, demonstrating a clear and measurable path towards sustainability and reduced reliance on fossil fuels. They even had an ambitious aim to increase this to 50% by 2020, showing a proactive commitment to ongoing improvement.
And waste management, often overlooked.
What's truly fascinating here is their strong, proactive emphasis on waste management. They've implemented stringent measures across all units, making it mandatory to recycle and reuse an impressive 99% of their discharged waste.
99% reuse and recycling. That's incredible.
It is, and this isn't just about internal practices. They also educate on source isolation and actively provide recyclables to other businesses, paper, glass, plastic, contributing significantly to a circular economy, minimizing what goes to landfill.
Closing the loop.
And then there's their unique e-Chopal model. This is seen as a truly groundbreaking ITC initiative.
What does it do?
It creates direct markets with rural communities through village internet kiosks. It essentially brings the power of the internet, crucial market information, and fair trade directly to small and peripheral farmers who previously had limited access and were often exploited by middlemen.
Empowering farmers through technology and market access.
Exactly, empowering them economically and socially.
And their afforestation program, you mentioned it was massive.
Truly massive. Greening over 660,000 acres across India. That's an incredible scale of ecological restoration and carbon sequestration.
Just planting trees or more to it?
It goes beyond simple tree planting. It strategically empowers farmers with low productivity land to develop economically viable pulpwood plantations.
So turning unproductive land into an asset for farmers.
Precisely. Transforming inefficient, often fallow resources into productive ones, providing tangible economic benefits and alternative livelihoods. Simultaneously, it significantly contributes to vital groundwater recharge, crucial soil preservation, and substantial carbon sequestration.
It's a multifaceted environmental and social success.
Exactly. Benefits for people and planet long term.
What about social programs like for women?
ITC's Women's League is another excellent example of their integrated approach to social stewardship. It's specifically designed for women from weaker sections of society.
How does it help them?
It provides them with essential skills and vocational training to furnish them with reasonable monetary benefits and opportunities for financial independence. This includes motivating them to form small self-improvement groups for savings, self-employment, and microfinance, directly addressing socioeconomic empowerment at the grassroots level.
So building capacity and financial independence.
Yes. And they have other wide-ranging CSR activities, too, demonstrating a broad commitment to community well-being. Primary education programs, skilling and communication training for youth, vital health and sanitation initiatives, even a music research center that helps preserve and promote India's rich cultural heritage.
A very broad portfolio of initiatives.
And underpinning all this is their comprehensive stakeholder engagement process.
How does that work?
It involves all partners, importantly including those who are often disadvantaged, vulnerable, and marginalized. And it transparently works to address their concerns. This truly reflects ITC's deep accountability and proactive role as a steward to the community.
So actively including marginalized voices.
Yes. They don't just engage with the easy, powerful partners. They actively seek out and include those most impacted by their operations, ensuring their voices are heard and their needs are considered. This level of inclusive engagement is presented as a hallmark of true stewardship.
So the overall picture for ITC.
The way ITC manages and carries out its CSR initiatives truly embodies the stewardship principle, according to the source. They are not merely performing charitable acts on the side.
They're integrated.
They are demonstrating that they are accountable and act as genuine stewards to the community, focusing on ethical, responsible, and integrated practices in how they make money and how they operate their entire business across all its diverse segments.
So this deep integration.
Of responsibility into their core operations, from environmental impact to social empowerment, is what truly sets them apart in this analysis as a powerful example of holistic stewardship.
Community stewardship. Empowering local action for global impact.
Okay, so we've explored corporate stewardship in quite some detail, looking at the good, the bad, and the truly integrated examples like Kellogg and ITC.
Right, the corporate level.
But the concept of stewardship isn't exclusive to large businesses with global footprints, is it? It also applies, perhaps even more fundamentally, at the local level.
Absolutely, it's maybe even more intuitive there sometimes.
Our second source, Fostering Community Stewardship from NOAA's Coral Reef Information System, vividly illustrates its critical importance, particularly in environmental conservation.
Focusing on coral reefs, vital ecosystems.
Exactly. And this practical guide defines stewardship quite simply as, quote, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care.
Entrusted to one's care. That language is important.
It is. It takes the abstract idea of responsibility and grounds it in tangible local action, often driven by everyday people in their own communities.
Which raises the important question. How exactly do you empower local communities to take a more active, sustaining role in managing the natural resources they depend on? Like, in this case, those incredibly fragile and vital coral reefs.
Good question. What does the guide suggest?
Well, the guide emphasizes that stewardship programs are not just, feel-good initiatives or mere educational campaigns distributing pamphlets.
It's not just awareness raising.
No. Instead, they create a practical, actionable framework for greater community participation and more organized resource allocation. This allows local people to become active agents in their own environmental future.
And the result?
Ultimately, this leads to demonstrably better outcomes for both the immediate environment, like the health and resilience of coral reefs, and for the communities whose livelihoods, cultures, and overall well-being are intrinsically linked to those resources.
So it's about shifting from being passive observers
Or just complying with rules imposed from outside.
to active engagement and shared, deeply felt responsibility.
Exactly. Taking ownership.
And these programs you mentioned are designed to be more than just information campaigns. Their ultimate goal is to catalyze action, right? And fundamentally change social norms within a community.
Yes, inspiring collective shifts in behavior that actually last. The source mentions the theory of planned behavior, which is a widely recognized psychological model.
What does that theory tell us?
It helps us understand how a complex combination of individual attitudes, what people believe and feel, plus prevailing social norms, what their community expects of them, and also perceptions of personal agency.
Meaning whether they feel they can actually make a difference?
Precisely. Whether someone believes they truly have the ability to influence outcomes, how all those things come together to influence our behavior choices, it's about understanding the deep internal and external drivers of human action.
Okay, so how do organizations actually apply this theory?
Well, what's truly fascinating here is how organizations like RARE, a global conservation nonprofit, apply this in real-world conservation. Their highly successful Pride campaign exemplifies a robust theory of change framework.
A theory of change, how does that work?
It moves systematically through several stages, meticulously designed to lead to tangible results. First, increasing knowledge and speaking to emotions, getting people to understand the science and feel a deep connection to the issue.
Head and heart.
Exactly. This then shapes attitudes about what people intend to do. Next, it actively focuses on barrier removal, identifying and proactively overcoming the practical, social, economic, or even political obstacles that might prevent people from acting responsibly.
So making it easier to do the right thing.
Yes. This strategic progression is designed to lead directly to desired behavior change, whether that's adopting sustainable fishing practices or reducing pollution runoff.
And that behavior change leads to
Measurable threat reduction to the ecosystem, and finally, hopefully, a positive conservation result.
a clear pathway.
It's a holistic approach. It doesn't just tell people what to do, but it aims to inspire them, enable them, and support them to make a lasting difference. How? By truly tapping into the heartfelt passion and connections people have toward coral reefs and converting this into decisions and actions that can make a difference.
That connection piece seems vital, and this concept of stewardship, particularly in environmental contexts, it resonates deeply with many cultures, doesn't it?
Hugely. making it an incredibly powerful foundation for conservation efforts. The guide highlights that for numerous communities, particularly indigenous ones with long histories tied to the land and sea, environmental stewardship presents a crucial opportunity for individuals to acknowledge and act on their moral responsibility to care for nature, often seen as Mother Earth or God's creation.
So it's not just scientific or economic, but spiritual and cultural.
Absolutely. It's rooted in generational wisdom and a sense of sacred trust. It's about expressing deep gratitude for nature's gifts and wisely using resources for the benefit of all, not just the current generation, but for countless future ones too.
Which implies that religious organizations could be important partners.
Indeed. This deep cultural and spiritual connection makes religious organizations potentially important and highly effective partners in reef stewardship projects, as they often share these deep-seated values of care and responsibility for creation.
And this focus on internal drivers, values, moral responsibility.
It provides a far more sustainable and resilient foundation for conservation than just relying on external incentives alone, like financial payments or strict regulations.
Why is that?
While incentives can play a role, they rarely foster the deep intrinsic motivation needed for long-term commitment. People might comply while the payment lasts, but what happens when it stops?
Right. The behavior might stop too.
Exactly. The guide emphasizes that effective stewardship is about recognizing and actively promoting positive actions people are already implementing, validating their existing efforts and knowledge.
Building on strengths.
Yes, and then encouraging new reef-friendly behaviors through guidance, support, and shared learning rather than just, certifying compliance after the fact or focusing only on punishment. This approach builds on existing strengths within a community and empowers local populations to lead their own conservation journeys.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do you go about building these impactful community stewardship programs from the ground up? What are the steps?
Well, the guide offers a clear, multi-step process for program managers and community leaders looking to foster genuine local action. It starts, logically, with a thorough needs analysis, really understanding the specific environmental issues and community concerns.
Gotta know the problem first.
Then, meticulously involving key stakeholders from various sectors: fishermen, tourism operators, elders, youth, local government.
Getting buy-in.
Critical. Then, carefully planning the program with clear, measurable objectives and then implementing it with a crucial emphasis on continuous learning and adaptation built directly into the process. It's not set in stone.
Which brings up a key point.
Yeah.
How do you select and effectively engage the right participants? The guide says people are the heart and soul of these programs.
That's a really important corollary for program managers. The guide recommends applying tools typically used in market analysis, which might sound a bit surprising for conservation.
Market analysis, like for selling products.
Sort of, but adapted. It involves conducting demographic and psychographic evaluations, simple surveys, targeted focus groups. The goal is to deeply understand the varied attitudes, motivations, and constraints of potential participants.
Why is that deep understanding so important?
Because people are motivated by different things. Some might be primarily motivated by potential economic gains from sustainable practices, like ecotourism. Others might be driven by a moral desire to protect nature for future generations, or simply by community pride.
So you tailor the message.
Exactly. This deep understanding allows program managers to tailor communication efforts, ensuring messages speak directly to people's values and current behaviors, thereby accelerating genuine engagement and fostering a stronger sense of connection and shared purpose. It's about meeting people where they are, not forcing them into a preconceived mold.
And the guide also mentions identifying early adopters and champions.
Yes, that's a powerful approach. Identify and strategically promote those individuals within the community who are already setting an example of reef-friendly behaviors or are particularly enthusiastic and influential about conservation.
Using positive role models.
Right. By highlighting their positive actions and successes, you create tangible role models in a visible pathway that others in the community can emulate and be inspired by. It's about focusing on positive actions and encouraging people to go above and beyond what is required by regulation, rather than just hammering on what's going wrong.
That positive reinforcement seems key.
It creates a much more empowering and effective environment for widespread change.
And what about testing things out first, before going full scale?
Ah, yes, a particularly critical point, and one that often distinguishes truly successful programs from less effective ones, is the strategic use of pilot programs.
Smaller trial versions.
Exactly. Smaller scale, short-term initiatives, typically running for maybe 9 months, often up to 2 years, designed to test the feasibility, assess the actual resource commitments needed, identify practical challenges on the ground, and measure the expected outcomes before broad, full-scale implementation.
Learning by doing on a small scale.
Precisely. This iterative approach is invaluable. It encourages constant monitoring, rigorous evaluation, and continuous improvement based on real-world feedback. And crucially, it directly involves participants in this process.
Why is involving participants in the pilot important?
Because that collaborative approach significantly strengthens their sense of ownership over the program and its outcomes. It transforms it from something being done to them into a truly community-led and therefore more sustainable effort.
Okay, this all sounds like a lot of coordination, a massive number of moving parts. How does one person or a small team possibly manage all that, especially in complex community environments?
You're absolutely right. It is complex. The role of the local coordinator is indeed vital, almost like the conductor of a complex orchestra, as you said.
What qualities do they need?
The guide specifies they should be someone who can genuinely inspire and influence others, possesses excellent communication skills, listening as much as talking, is highly organized, experienced in program implementation, and, critically, deeply passionate about conservation. That passion is contagious.
So they're the central hub.
They really are. They're responsible for building effective relationships across various groups within the community, from elders and traditional leaders to youth groups and local businesses. They lead the planning of the program's vision, defining clear, measurable objectives using those SMART principles.
Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely.
Right. Crafting strategic approaches, detailing specific actions, and perhaps most importantly, securing genuine commitments from all key players.
Everyone from funders to individual stewards.
Exactly. From the host organization and funders, right down to local community leaders and the individual stewards themselves. Their ability to foster trust, facilitate dialogue, and build collaboration is absolutely paramount to the program's long-term success and sustainability. They're the linchpin.
Indigenous peoples and local communities, IPLCs. The guardians of biodiversity.
Okay, our third source, the role of Indigenous peoples and local communities in effective and equitable conservation from IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, offers an even deeper and I think more crucial perspective on community stewardship, especially in the realm of global biodiversity conservation.
Right, focusing specifically on Indigenous peoples and local communities, often abbreviated as IPLCs.
Yes, and it highlights the growing global recognition of IPLCs as not just important partners, but absolutely central and indispensable to effective conservation efforts worldwide. It's a recognition of their unique and vital role that perhaps wasn't always there.
And what's truly fascinating here, and maybe challenging to some traditional conservation views, is the core argument. Involving IPLCs isn't just about fostering equity or fulfilling a moral obligation, although those are certainly important.
It leads to better results.
It directly and unequivocally leads to better biodiversity outcomes.
Why is that? What's the connection?
Well, the well-being of IPLCs is often intrinsically bound to nature, meaning their livelihoods, their cultural practices, their spiritual beliefs, their very identities are inseparable from the health and vitality of their environment.
They live it every day.
They do. They possess a deep, often centuries-old history of sustainably managed species and ecosystems developed through generations of living in intricate harmony with their natural surroundings, observing cycles, developing practices that ensure abundance rather than depletion.
Generational knowledge.
Exactly. And their holistic approach to well-being often encompasses not only material resources like food and income, but also vital aspects like health, security, and crucial social, cultural, psychological, political, and institutional factors. This comprehensive, integrated understanding of their relationship with nature makes them uniquely positioned as highly effective and often historically overlooked conservationists.
However, the source also exposes a significant disconnect, doesn't it? A gap between rhetoric and reality.
Yes, a major challenge in global conservation. Quote, while many funders and practitioners have adopted the rhetoric of equitable and inclusive conservation, these principles have had less impact on site-level governance.
So the talk is there, but the actual power structures on the ground haven't changed much.
That's the critical and frustrating gap, it points out. High-level policy aspirations often fall critically short in practice, leaving communities feeling marginalized despite all the positive rhetoric.
And the study contrasts different governance models.
Precisely. It draws a stark and illuminating contrast between two primary governance models in conservation. On one side, you have externally controlled governance.
Meaning outsiders are in charge.
Yes, management regimes dominated by external actors, the state, large international NGOs, private firms which often disregard or actively supersede local practices and customary institutions. Decisions are made far from the communities directly interacting with the land and resources, often by people lacking that deep, nuanced local ecological knowledge.
Okay, that's one model. What's the other?
The other is locally controlled governance. This is characterized by IPLCs having primary influence with their own traditional institutions and leadership playing a core guiding role.
So local people are in the driver's seat.
Yes, whether through autonomous management or truly collaborative arrangements with external partners where locals have real power. This model respects, validates, and integrates local knowledge and decision-making structures, recognizing centuries of accumulated wisdom.
And here's where it gets really interesting, right? The research looked at outcomes based on these models.
Yes, and the data is quite compelling, presenting what looks like a clear mandate for how we should approach conservation. The research revealed that cases demonstrating simultaneously positive social and ecological outcomes.
Meaning both people and nature thrive.
Exactly. Those successful cases were overwhelmingly associated with local control and stewardship. More than 2/3 of such studies directly linked conservation success to this model.
More than 2/3. That's significant.
It really is. In stark contrast, interventions controlled primarily by external organizations often resulted in, quote, relatively ineffective conservation at the same time as producing negative social outcomes.
What kind of negative social outcomes?
These are particularly distressing. Widespread discrimination, dispossession of ancestral lands, and even in some cases, violent cultural assimilation. It shows a clear, often tragic pattern of human rights harm alongside ineffective environmental protection.
It highlights that an approach that harms people often harms nature too.
They seem inextricably linked, yes.
Now, this raises an important question about some popular contemporary approaches, like market-oriented conservation, things like payment for ecosystem services, REDD plus programs.
Right, RDD plus being reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation.
Alternative livelihood programs, certification schemes like fair trade or sustainable forestry.
What does the study say about those? They're often framed as community-based.
Well, despite often being described by conservation organizations as community-based or inclusive, the study categorized all 31 cases in its sample under externally controlled governance.
All of them. Why?
Because ultimately, external private companies, NGOs, and state agencies typically held the ultimate influence and decision-making power rather than the local communities themselves. The purse strings, the rules, the final say often resided elsewhere.
So the community-based label might be misleading sometimes.
It suggests it can be. And these market-based models, while sometimes well-intentioned, can also be highly vulnerable to external factors, insecurity, economic shocks, unpredictable funding changes.
Leading to potential problems.
Potentially leading to issues such as overharvesting or resource degradation due to weak accountability when that external support falters or priorities shift. It underscores that simply providing financial incentives doesn't automatically create true local stewardship if the underlying control remains external. Okay, so given this stark contrast between external and local control and the compelling evidence that local leadership works better for both people and nature, what are the proven pathways that truly lead to success?
The most significant finding, and one that echoes through the entire report like a constant drumbeat, is that empowered local communities represent the primary pathway to effective conservation.
Empowered local communities. What does that mean in practice?
The study found that the most important social factors supporting positive conservation outcomes were not merely the magnitude of material benefits received by IPLCs, like getting a new school or clinic, those are nice, but crucially, the profound recognition of local social and cultural practices and the community's genuine ability to influence decision-making processes regarding their lands and resources.
Agency, respect, self-determination.
Exactly, not just handouts. Local institutions governing land, sea, and natural resources are often, as the source says, entwined with social relations and cultural and spiritual expression. These systems have frequently evolved over centuries, not just for resource management, but to deliver both a good quality of life and effective long-term conservation simultaneously. They are integrated systems.
Does the report give specific examples?
Yes, compelling examples that bring this to life. The Sioux Village in Taiwan, for instance, successfully restored a degraded state-run national forest. How?
How?
By collectively and voluntarily self-regulating resource use, they decided together what they would harvest and when, and critically, by resisting external commercial pressures. Ultimately, they gained secure tenure as legitimate forest stewards. Their self-determination and collective discipline were absolutely key.
Amazing example.
Right.
Any others?
Similarly, low-income communities in Nepal achieved remarkably effective stewardship of a riparian habitat that's land along a river by developing new local conservation-oriented institutions. This led to tangible improvements like sustainable sanitation facilities and community gardens, directly transforming their environment, health, and quality of life.
Local institutions driving change.
And even in the United Kingdom, a community of farmers developed innovative ways to promote wildflower diversity, acting against prevailing commercial norms of monoculture, driven by their own values and collective action to restore local ecosystems.
These aren't just anecdotes, they're powerful, replicable models of genuine stewardship driven from within.
Exactly. And these examples underscore how deeply local institutions are entwined with social relations and cultural and spiritual expression. These systems often evolve to deliver both a good quality of life and effective long-term conservation simultaneously, demonstrating an inherent sustainability.
What about collaboration with outsiders?
Oh.
Is it always local only?
No, collaboration is often key. Beyond the local level, crucial non-local institutional factors for success include the quality of interinstitutional collaboration and the establishment of strong relationships of trust between local communities and external partners.
How is that trust built? It can be difficult.
It often is. It's painstakingly built through dedicated conflict resolution processes, transparent and timely communication, and deep intercultural understanding. A great example cited is a co-managed watershed restoration program in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
What made it successful?
It saw remarkable success through legitimate mixed-gender leadership that truly represented the community's diverse voices and needs, fostering genuine shared governance and trust between the community and external partners.
So this deep dive into IPLC conservation suggests a fundamental and necessary shift is needed in how conservation is approached globally. It's not just about setting aside protected land.
No, it's about how that land and its resources are managed, and most importantly, by whom.
Right. So the implications for policy.
The findings strongly recommend that global conservation policy, from international agreements down to national strategies, must prioritize culturally appropriate and locally led governance.
Going beyond just participation.
Far beyond mere full and effective participation or simply respect for traditional knowledge, which can sometimes be tokenistic, it demands actively identifying, integrating, and supporting customary systems of tenure and authority, rather than imposing entirely different structures that disregard existing, often highly effective local frameworks.
And this aligns with international standards.
Yes, such a fundamental shift towards more equitable governance aligns with internationally accepted governance standards and human rights law. And the study argues convincingly that this approach represents cost-effective models of governance that deliver multifold benefits for nature as well as the public governments and private agencies.
More durable and adaptable, too.
Exactly. These locally controlled solutions are inherently more durable, adaptable, and resilient in the face of external pressures, like economic shocks, climate change impacts, or shifting political trends, compared to vulnerable, externally controlled models that often depend on fleeting funding or external political will. It's presented as the pathway to genuinely robust and long-lasting conservation that truly benefits everyone.
Social capital. The unseen force driving community well-being.
Okay, so we've talked about corporate stewardship and we've talked about community stewardship, especially the vital role of Indigenous peoples and local communities being empowered. But what's the hidden ingredient? What's the invisible but incredibly powerful force that enables such profound community engagement and successful local stewardship?
What allows communities to rally, to innovate, to protect their environment and their collective well-being, especially when facing challenges?
Yeah. Our final source, Understanding Social Capital and Its Effects on Community Development from gtatar.org, gives us a powerful and insightful answer. It suggests it's something called social capital.
Social capital. Okay, what exactly is that? It sounds a bit academic.
It can sound that way, but the definition is quite intuitive. Social capital is defined as the networks, relationships, and norms of trust and reciprocity that exist within a community or society.
So connections, trust, helping each other out.
Pretty much. It's much more than just individual connections. It encompasses shared values, mutual support, and a collective sense of responsibility among individuals and groups. Think of it like this. It's often referred to as the social glue.
The social glue. I like that.
Yeah, the social glue that binds individuals together, fostering cooperation, collaboration, and collective action. Unlike financial capital money or human capital individual skills and knowledge,
Social capital isn't tangible.
no, it's not physical or easily quantifiable, but its presence plays a crucial foundational role in shaping the very fabric of a community and driving its progress and overall well-being. It's the invisible infrastructure of a thriving society.
Okay, so what does this social glue actually mean for communities like yours and mine? In practical terms, how does its presence show up in everyday life? How does it contribute to genuine progress and resilience?
That's an excellent question because it's easy to talk about it abstractly, but its impact is very real. How does the presence of social capital actually manifest?
Yeah, what does it look like?
Well, the study details far-reaching effects across various aspects of community development, demonstrating its transformative power. It significantly influences civic engagement.
Like people getting involved locally.
Exactly. Encouraging people to participate actively in local governance, volunteer for community projects, take part in decision-making processes. It boosts economic development
How does it boost the economy?
by fostering entrepreneurial support networks, facilitating knowledge sharing among local businesses, enabling collective initiatives like cooperatives. It strengthens vital social support networks,
The safety net.
ensuring people have a safety net and assistance in times of need, whether that's childcare, help from a neighbor, or support after a natural disaster. And it profoundly enhances problem-solving capabilities.
So,
It allows communities to collectively identify, deliberate, and address complex issues more effectively. Communities with robust social capital are simply, as the source put it,
and it instills community pride.
a strong sense of community pride and ownership, yes. Because when people feel deeply connected and invested in their shared environment and future, they naturally take pride in it and work to protect it.
What about resilience? Coping with difficulties.
Beyond these, it significantly enhances community resilience in the face of adversity, enabling individuals to rely on each other for support during difficult times, an economic downturn, a natural disaster, a public health crisis.
Cell bouncing back stronger.
Hopefully. And if that weren't enough, it actively fosters cultural and artistic expression by creating platforms for shared creativity and preserving traditions through strong intergenerational networks. Ultimately, the source argues, it leads to an enhanced quality of life for community members by promoting deep social cohesion, pervasive trust, and reducing social isolation. It's truly the bedrock upon which a flourishing, sustainable society is built.
And crucially, for our deep dive today, connecting back to the previous sources, social capital has a direct and incredibly significant impact on fostering environmental stewardship within a community.
The direct link to environmental action.
Yes. It provides the very framework and motivation for collective environmental action, translating abstract concern into tangible efforts on the ground.
What's truly fascinating here is how those strong social connections directly translate into environmental action. How does that work?
Well, when individuals have robust social ties, when they trust their neighbors, feel a sense of shared community, they are simply more likely to collaborate on environmental initiatives.
Makes sense. You work with people you trust.
Exactly. Think about it. They're more inclined to join active conservation projects, participate effectively in recycling programs, or collectively adopt sustainable practices like water conservation or local cleanup efforts.
Because they feel accountable to each other.
Precisely. Social capital actively promotes collective responsibility for the environment because people feel accountable not just to abstract principles, but to their neighbors, their friends, the visible community they share. This naturally encourages the preservation of vital natural resources for future generations, transforming individual awareness into powerful, sustained collective action.
And the source also points to how social capital extends its influence beyond just the local boundaries.
Yes, that's another key aspect. It facilitates intercommunity collaboration on a regional scale, allowing different towns or villages to work together on shared environmental challenges like watershed management or regional waste strategies.
And collaboration across sectors.
It fosters interdisciplinary collaboration across different sectors like education, healthcare, business, bringing diverse expertise to bear on complex environmental problems. And it even supports international cooperation and networking on a global level.
How does local social capital support international cooperation?
By creating strong local bases that can then connect outwards, allowing communities to learn from each other, share best practices across borders, and tackle shared challenges like climate change collectively. This interconnectedness enables broader knowledge transfer, valuable cultural exchange, and more effective collective problem-solving on regional or even global scales.
So all these profound effects.
They contribute significantly to the long-term sustainability of community development efforts, ensuring that positive changes endure, adapt, and evolve over time. The study concludes by stressing that understanding and diligently nurturing social capital is absolutely essential for fostering community well-being and driving positive change across every aspect of societal life. It's truly the invisible engine of collective progress and effective stewardship.
The deep roots of true stewardship.
Okay, so after diving deep into the nuances of corporate responsibility, the vital role of community action, and now the very fabric of social connection, social capital that underpins so much of it, what's the big overarching takeaway for you, our listener, about what true stewardship actually means?
Yeah, it feels like we've uncovered something far richer, far more integrated, and frankly, maybe far more demanding than the headlines about big donations often suggest.
Definitely.
If we connect all these threads, it becomes abundantly clear, I think, that whether we're discussing a huge multinational corporation with a global footprint and immense resources, or a small coastal village managing its local fishing grounds and water resources, genuine stewardship is never just about grand superficial gestures or isolated one-off acts of charity designed for good PR.
It's deeper.
It is fundamentally about the ethical, responsible, and deeply integrated way resources are managed, and how value is created and shared across all stakeholders, from employees and communities to ecosystems.
Yeah.
It truly is about how you make money or how you manage what is entrusted to your care, woven into the very fabric of operations, rather than simply how you spend it once the profits are already generated, regardless of the consequences of generating them. The process, the integrity, the sustained holistic impact, that's what defines true stewardship.
And we've seen the stark contrast today, haven't we? We looked at companies like Coca-Cola and Patanjali, where, according to the source, their grand charitable claims and public awards were profoundly undermined by harmful, unethical, and irresponsible core business practices.
Right. The veneer of giving, however substantial, simply couldn't hide the environmental damage, the health risks, or the deceptive marketing done by how they actually operated day to day.
Versus the exemplary cases like Kellogg and ITC.
Exactly. Who, in this analysis, seamlessly integrates social and environmental responsibility into their very operations, demonstrating a fundamental commitment that goes far beyond mere legal compliance or fleeting PR campaigns. It's embedded.
And in communities, we learn that external control and market incentives, while sometimes well-intentioned, often fall short compared to
the powerful, deeply sustainable impact generated by empowered local people whose well-being is intrinsically tied to their environment.
All enabled and amplified
By the incredible yet often unseen strength of their social capital. That trust, those shared values, the profound power of collective action that arises from strong community bonds.
So this really raises an important question for us all, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Both as individuals and as members of larger systems.
Which is?
How can we actively foster environments, both within corporate structures, demanding accountability from the businesses we engage with and support, and within our own local communities through our daily interactions and collective efforts, where genuine, deep-seated stewardship built on trust, collaboration, and shared values becomes not just an aspiration or a marketing slogan,
but the norm.
But the undeniable norm. It's clear from our deep dive today that it's the most reliable and resilient pathway to long-term well-being for both people and the planet, allowing for flourishing futures for generations to come. Outro. So consider this for a moment as we wrap up. If social capital is truly the social glue that enables powerful community stewardship, binding people together to protect what they share, and if genuine corporate stewardship is rooted in ethical, transparent operations rather than just donations.
Right, the how, not just the what.
What specific roles do you play in demanding, supporting, and actively participating in these deeper, more meaningful forms of responsibility in your daily life?
That's a great question to leave people with.
Think about it not just as a consumer, making choices about what you buy and from whom.
Though that's part of it.
It is. But also as an engaged citizen within your community, maybe as within an organization, or even as an investor, deciding where your money goes.
What can you do?
What small, intentional actions could you take starting today to strengthen that social glue in your own communities? How can you help build trust, foster collaboration, and promote a more sustainable and equitable future for everyone right where you are?